What's up, guys? This is Nick Strange. Welcome to the Strangeverse YouTube channel. This is our first episode. I call it our, but I'm the only person here. For this first episode, I've really been wanting to talk about what could have been as it pertains to the first DCEU film, Man of Steel. It's a very divisive film. I go back and forth on it, but it's fun to discuss, and it could have been drastically different from the creatives involved to the actual cast itself. Maybe we'll start with Jor-El. As we all know, Russell Crowe turned in a pretty solid performance as Jor-El, but he was not the only guy that was considered for the role. According to The Hollywood Reporter, Clive Owen and Sean Penn were both also under consideration for Jor-El. Kind of following that classic tradition that was established with Marlon Brando going for an A-list actor, which was later continued in James Gunn's Superman reboot with the Bradley Cooper cameo there. Clive Owen and Sean Penn are drastically different actors that bring a lot of intensity, but I have to say I think Clive Owen is a much stronger choice for Jor-El than Sean Penn would be. Sean Penn brings this pent-up rage. He has the eyes of a killer, and I'm not sure that his skill set is particularly suited to the role of Jor-El. Clive Owen just feels like a much easier fit, and I could have even seen him in the role of Superman. And I think it's kind of fun to cast a Jor-El that could believably play a Superman when they were younger. Sticking with the Kryptonian sequences, you've got Zod, who was expertly played by Michael Shannon. I hate to say it, but these two guys might have been a little bit better. You've got Viggo Mortensen and Daniel Day-Lewis, who were apparently up for the role of Zod, or at least considered for it. There was a report in The Hollywood Reporter that Zack Snyder was eyeing Viggo Mortensen for the role, and this guy's been courted for so many big IP projects. I think he was also under consideration for the role of Ra's al Ghul in Batman Begins as well. Viggo as a villain is just peak. If you haven't seen The Prophecy, he plays Lucifer in that movie, and it's just unbelievable. I'm sure lots of directors think about this guy and never actually get him. But Daniel Day-Lewis was one of Zack Snyder's first picks, and obviously would have been amazing. That didn't happen. Hopefully, at some point, we could get this guy into the Marvel Universe or DC. Sticking with the Kryptonians, let's look at Feora, who was played by Anche Trau. I'm not really sure how to say her name, but she killed it. I think these other names are pretty solid too. And one of them, God, I wish she would have gotten the role, but not for the reason you would think. Alice Eve, Diane Kruger, and Rosamund Pike were all under consideration for the role, according to Variety. Rosamund Pike, I can really see in the role. She plays an Ice Queen very well. If you look at things like Gone Girl, she would have been a great Feora. This final name, I really wish she wouldn't have turned the role down because it would have spared us something later. Gal Gadot was up for the role of Feora and turned it down. As a result, we got Kal-El, no, get the stone. Sounded more like Christopher Walken than Gal Gadot, but Jesus, she really looked the part. She looked amazing as Wonder Woman. Let's just get that out of the way. But good Lord, wish she would have played Feora, and we could have gotten somebody else as Wonder Woman. Next up, we've got Lois Lane. We've had a few stinkers. I'm looking at you, Kate Bosworth, but we've had some really phenomenal Loises as well, like Margot Kidder. Erica Durance is a little bit unsung as Smallville's Lois Lane. Amy Adams in Man of Steel, not my favorite Lois Lane, but solid. These other actresses that were up for the role include Zoe Saldana, the franchise queen. Not sure if I see her as Lois, but I mean, she's a great actress. Kristen Stewart, what the horrible idea. I don't understand. I could see her as maybe Raven or something during that time, but really not Lois. Rachel McAdams would have been phenomenal. She was heavily rumored for the role. Olivia Wilde would have been solid. Diana Agron, not super familiar with her work. I've seen her in a few things, and I'm sure she would have been okay. Jessica Biel, again, I mean, we can do better. Mila Kunis was apparently up for the role, and there's something about that idea that is really interesting to me. One of my favorite Lois Lanes is the animated series voiced by Dana Delaney. She brought a lot of comedy to the role, and I think that Mila Kunis would probably naturally gravitate towards that type of performance, and I would have loved to see it. Lara, Superman's mother, she was played by Eilert Zurer Vanessa from Daredevil. Connie Nielsen was apparently up for Lara. I'm glad that she ended up playing Queen Hippolyta instead in the Wonder Woman movie. She was one of the highlights of that movie for sure. Julia Ormond had the role, but she dropped out. And then finally, we've got the Man of Steel himself. Henry Cavill was not the only choice for Superman. A lot of actors were considered. Some of the more interesting names that floated to the surface include Tyler Hoechlin, who ended up playing Superman in the Arrowverse. He was one of the best parts of those shows, for sure. I've also got Joe Manganiello, who was said to be the second choice. I wasn't totally sold on it because he typically plays those tough guy or bully roles, but I saw some fan art that really convinced me as the years have gone on. I've seen a lot more of his range, and I think that he can convey a lot more warmth than I had thought when I saw this rumor for the first time over 10 years ago. It didn't happen, and he ended up playing Deathstroke instead. Jamie Dornan, our new Aragorn, he was up for the role, and I mean, he's got a pretty decent look for it, but I'm not sure if he has the Superman vibe. Colin O'Donoghue was a finalist, as well as Matthew Good, who was Snyder's Ozymandias in Watchmen. Great in that role. Don't see him as Superman at all. Armie Hammer, who WB was already pretty familiar with. He had been cast in George Miller's Justice League Mortal for Batman in that, but that fell through at the last minute, and that's another what could have been. Anyways, that's about it for casting. A lot of those ideas, I'd be interested in seeing how it would have shaken out. Of course, Zack Snyder was not the only guy that was considered for the director's chair. There's some really interesting names that should be pretty familiar to a lot of DC fans. Guillermo del Toro, but he turned it down because he was working on the adaptation of At the Mountains of Madness, the classic H.P. Lovecraft horror story. Hopefully at some point he's able to finish work on that, because I'd love to see it. But he would have made a great Superman movie as well. I'm sure the visual effects and creature designs in Krypton would have been mind-blowing. Robert Zemeckis was also approached. He ended up being offered the director's chair for The Flash later on. And that probably would have been better than what we got there, but that's a story for another video. Ben Affleck was considered, but it seemed the writing on the wall all the way back then. This is not the first time he was offered the chance to direct a DC film. Will Beall, the writer of Gangster Squad, was hired to write a Justice League film. Ben Affleck was seriously pursued to direct this original plan for Justice League. So they had been really high on Ben Affleck for a while at this point. So anyone following along should have probably been able to predict Batfleck. Another familiar name to Batman fans is Darren Aronofsky, who was, of course, course, planning a Batman Year One film with Frank Miller in the early 2000s, in that period in between Batman and Robin and Batman Begins. But I don't know why they would consider him for a Superman movie. This just makes no sense. It's like John Waters directing a Captain America movie. It's weird. Jonathan Liebsman, respectable, but nothing special. Duncan Jones, who of course is Bowie's son, very creative director. I'm not as high on him as a lot of people are, but I'm sure it would have been interesting at least. And then Matt Reeves was totally up for Man of Steel, which is so crazy that he could have been running the DC universe way back then, but he would have been a great pick for Superman, and I'd still like to see his take on the character. And we've got Tony Scott, rest in peace. He was up for directing this. Not my favorite pick from the list, but we got Snyder, for better or for worse. You could make the argument that he is the greatest villain that the DC universe has ever faced. He's the mastermind of the DCEU, at least at the beginning. And these movies were so poorly received and so clearly not what the audiences wanted to see. I mean, it is what it is. You can like them. I even like all three of his movies. I like them. I think they have great ideas within them. But ultimately, it was just not what the world needed, not what fans needed, not what the general audience needed. I just like to think about what could have been, and maybe if some of these ideas had come to fruition, we wouldn't be looking at the DCEU retrospectively. It might be an ongoing franchise along the lines of the MCU, but that's not where we are. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. It's my first one. Hopefully I'll get a little bit better at this.